Greetings, it is Maxo Diddley here, and today I am here with another Python tutorial to help you get an A in your coursework or exam. And today we're here with validating the size of a file using Python. So let's say you've got a program and you want to allow the user to upload a profile picture, but you want to put a 1 megabyte restriction on the upper limit and a 100 kilobyte restriction on the lower end of the size for that file. Well, we can do that. Or if you just want the file size to be less than a certain size or greater than a certain size, we can also do that. So we're going to go right into it. Length checks for file sizes. So right now we've currently got a file path of the file we want to check the size of. Then we've got print is valid file size, file path 260 and 250. This probably doesn't make sense right now, but we're going to be making two functions to validate the file size. One's going to be a range and one's just going to be a normal length check. Click the eye up in the corner if you want to see another length check tutorial. The first thing we want to do is we want to import the OS library. We want to do this because there's functions in there we need to use for this tutorial. So we're going to be making two functions. And the first one's going to be is valid file size, file path max size. So you do def for define is valid file size, that's the name of our function, file path and max size. So basically we're going to be checking, hey, if the file is less than the maximum size it's valid, if not it's invalid. The first thing we want to do is we want to do if os.path.exists file path equals false, return false. Basically, we don't want to do a check on a file if it doesn't exist. So we're going to check if it doesn't exist. If it doesn't exist, return a false because it can't be the valid size if there is no size to check. After that, we're going to do file size, which is going to be a variable we're creating now, equals os.stat filepath.st_size divided by 1024. So, file size is a variable we're going to assign the file size to. It's going to be equal to os.stat filepath. This is getting statistics of a file path, or a file I should say, based on the file path we pass in, which is this file path. And then st.size is going to get the size in bytes. However, we don't want to work with bytes. Bytes are pretty big in their numerical value, not size-wise. So to convert bytes to kilobytes, we divide by 1024. So we're going to be getting the file size in kilobytes. You can change this to whatever you want, but we're going to do kilobytes because it's small but not too small. After that, we're going to do if file size is less than max size, and in a return statement. So, if this is true, we return a true. If file size is less than the maximum size, return a true. If file size is not less than the maximum size, you return a false because this statement becomes a false. So that's how we do a basic length check. Now let's define our range check. So we do def is valid file size range, file path, max size and min size. So it's like the same as before, we're defining a function, it's called isValidFileSizeRange because it's a range check. We pass in file path, then max size, then min size. So the min size is the lower bound and the max size is the upper bound. And we want the file path size to be within that range to be considered valid. The first thing we do is to do if os.path.exists file path equals false, return false. It's literally a copy and paste of what we did before. We're checking if the file exists. If it exists, cool. If it doesn't exist, we return false. We don't bother with the function because it doesn't exist. You can't check the size of a file that doesn't exist. After that, we're going to do file size equals os.stat filepath.st_size divided by 1024. It's the exact same as before, we're getting the size of the file in kilobytes. After that, we are going to do return file size is less than maximum size and file size is greater than minimum size. So, we've got an AND statement, meaning every operation needs to be true for the overall statement to become true. If at least one is false, then the whole thing becomes false. It's like if you are looking for a partner and you want them to be tall and to have blue eyes and to play World of Warcraft for 10 hours a day at least. If you meet someone who matches 2 of those criteria but not all 3, and you have these 3 as deal breakers, you're not going to get with them, are you? Because they don't match all 3 criteria. Now, if you're someone like me who has very low standards, or none at all, then you won't encounter that problem. But for those of you who do, think of this just like that. We need both of these to be true. If one isn't true, it's a deal breaker. So we have file size less than max size. We're checking if the file size is less than the maximum size. If it is, great, return true. If not, it's a false. Then we've got file size is greater than the minimum size. So basically, is the file size greater than the minimum size? And ultimately, this becomes is the file size in between the maximum size and the minimum size? And this returns a true or false depending on how these 2 comparisons go. And that's it for this tutorial. Click Save. So go to your Solution Explorer, right click, go to Open Folder in File Explorer. This is how you get your project file in Visual Studio. And this is where we have our file we're going to test. It's 280 kilobytes approximately. This will be different for different IDEs. Your file path can be whatever you want, just make sure you set it up properly. For this tutorial, it's relative to where our Python file is to keep it simple. So it's 280 kilobytes. We're going to firstly check if the size of the file is less than 300. And it says true because it's only 280. Let's try 250. It says false because it's not less than 250 because it's 280 kilobytes. Now let's try the range. So 250 is going to be the minimum size and the maximum size is going to be 300. Let's hit play. As you can see, it says true because it's within the range of 250 and 300. What if it's 260 though, as the upper bound? Well, let's find out. It says false because 280 is greater than 260. Now let's try one other thing. The upper bound will be 340, the lower bound will be 300. It's false because it's 280, meaning it's less than the minimum value, which is bad. And that's it for this tutorial. Thanks for being a fantastic audience, and be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this. I will be posting more Python tutorials to help you get an A in your coursework or exam. And thanks for being a great audience. I'll see you next time.